This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon to be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug, the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret phrase is Brussel sprouts.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is Joe Sparks. Joe Sparks has interviewed NFL stars and third-string players, taken and taught writing and screenwriting classes, won awards, and been royally rejected. Former member of the Pro Football Writers Association, previous adjunct instructor at the film school at SEC, and the perky plumber in a Caldwell Banker commercial. And her books include The Legend of the Gamesman Fantasy Series, that's the Burr Elixir, The Abgen School, The Dim Continent. Is it Abgen or Agben?
Agben, yeah.
Agben, the Agben School, the Dim Continent, and then the nonfiction book, Feedback, How to Give It, How to Get It, and A Writer's Guide to Spinning Gold. And then most recently, The Wake of the Sadiko, or Sadik, how do you pronounce it?
Sadiko. Sadiko, it's Spanish.
And The Honey Tree. Joe currently lives in the UK, and so as we are talking, it is evening here in Oregon and very early in the morning. So thank you for joining me at 5 in the morning your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, and to get into that costume before that must have been very early. So as regular viewers know, we always get into these costumes in order to dress up. I've had all day because it's 9 o'clock here, and you had to get into that get up this morning. So tell the podcast listeners what it is you chose to wear for the show today.
Well, I'm dressed in the fashion of 1820s England, which I copied from the Empress Josephine Bonaparte. It's a floor-length rose dress because I love the color rose. It's empire waist because it's flattering to me and doesn't show stomach. And it's got delicate gold lacing framing the neck and the waist. It's deceptively simple. And the reason I'm wearing it is I really wanted to wear Elizabethan back in the Shakespeare times, but it's very voluminous. It's like full of material, and I got lost in it, so I gave up.
It's a lot. Well, this was convenient for me. I went with this Napoleon costume, and I have just recently seen the film Napoleon, so I had a sense, okay, I need this, double-breasted vest, and it is, this matching cream color pants, surprisingly comfortable, and of course the tri-cornered hat, that Napoleon made famous. So it was. I'm not sure how historically accurate all of the fashions in that are, but presuming that they had a costumer who knew what they were doing, I went with the Joaquin Phoenix version of Napoleon here. So yes, we are decked out. So folks who are listening can imagine us as such. But Joe, I've been so excited to have you on the show. Your latest book, The Honey Tree, is historical fiction, and that was a new genre for you, right? That was a switch.
Completely switch. I mean, it was like way different than anything I've written before. Um, I've been haunted more or less by this character, Maggie, for years, and I mean like 20 years. She's been dragging me kicking and screaming into her story. And to be perfectly honest, I was actually very reluctant because the honey tree is about a slave finding freedom, not just freedom like escaping, but freedom of the soul back in 1850s Missouri, which was so far. I mean, I'm an old white woman. What can I possibly know about slavery? But she wouldn't leave me alone. I'd tell her that. I'd say, look, this is not it. I'm going to write this story. And then somehow I'd start to get these images of racing down the Mississippi, trying to escape, discovering that rafts don't work so well if you don't have steering mechanisms on them. And it just came about that she wouldn't let go. So I finally wrote it, and then I had some peace again.
Yeah.
It was very odd, very
No,
odd.
that I totally understand. That is the way it goes. There's a story that wants to be told, and yeah, that is challenging. So yeah, so but what was the writing process? Well, I don't want to get too much into process to show about procrastination, but I'm really interested in, how much research that took and that portion of the process.
Well, that was the funny thing is the first thing I ever wrote was fantasy. And I thought, oh, fantasy's great because I get to make up the whole world and I don't have to do any research. Well, as you probably know, that is like, first off, you have to do a lot of research just to figure out things, how things would work. Like if you're going to have somebody being a blacksmith, you still have to know how you do that.
Right.
But more than that, when you make up your own world, you have to keep track of everything.
Hmm.
You can't use this as a herb to fix something here and not use it over there.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe history, just plain old history, will be better. No, because you'll sit down to write, you go to write, okay, they get in the wagon. Do they get in a wagon or a buggy? What did they have in 1850 Missouri? All I can say is thank heavens for the internet, because
Right.
in the middle of writing, you can go, okay, what was the fashion?
Oh yeah. I do not I can't imagine writing before like I'm very lucky in that the time I came into writing was the time when the tools were available that I need. Now it's possible that if I had been born in an earlier time, I would have adapted to those tools, but I am so grateful for the internet, for find and replace when I realize I have changed the spelling of a character's name partway through. I don't have to go back to a bunch of typed pages and retype them. I mean, these tools seem small to folks who don't write, but let me tell you, find and replace is a absolute godsend.
You're right. You're right.
So, what is a bit of pop culture that's been pulling you away from all this research and work lately?
Well, you mentioned the Pro Football Writers Association. I'm like addicted to the NFL. And I was in Arizona when I was doing that. So the Arizona Cardinals are my team. I, in fact, it drives my husband nuts because there I am, football's over, and I'm watching the draft, and then I'm watching draft predictions, and then I'm watching post-draft grades, and I'm watching film on guys, and it's absolutely insane. I mean, it's not
Oh,
like they're going to play an actual football game for months.
right. No, I totally get it though. I am the same way with the NBA and the off season is like this long tea time of the soul while I am where I am still listening to podcasts and I'm paying attention to every potential trade and it's not even trades, it's rumors of trades. Like this is, sicko stuff in the off season and I'm just going, "Come on, please start up." And right now we're in the midst of the playoffs and so it is a good time to be an NBA fan, but yeah, that summertime and during the off season there's still a lot of important action that you've got to follow, but it's only for us sickos. Now, how do you actually get to see games on UK time? That's got to be a challenge.
It is, but there are, like, in the UK and in all of Europe, we can get access. There's a thing called Days In, DAZN. It's a channel, an app that you can put on your TV. And we get to watch all the games live with that. When I was in the US, I was still addicted to the NFL had its own, like, where you could watch games after they've run.
Oh yeah.
And I actually got to the point where I could clean my house with the radio portion of that blaring while I listened to old games.
Wow, yeah, that's
I'm
you're a
pathetic.
diehard at that point. When you're listening to games, you know who wins, and you just want to listen to hear how it went. Yes, that's
That's it.
that's when, and I've done the same thing. I've watched old, playoff NBA games, and I know who won, but it is interesting. Oh yeah, that the Jordan game from '96 or whatever, you know. Yeah. So, but what about the time difference when you're watching them live? What time would they air there?
Well, if it's a morning game, so if it's like a 10 o'clock on the East Coast, then they start here, what is it, 6 o'clock in the evening? So we actually could watch the whole
Yeah.
game. But if it starts later, I mean, we're getting to like 9 o'clock starts and forget the late ones.
Yeah.
So, and we had to make this pact where it's like, okay, either we're going to watch it when it's live or we're going to wait till tomorrow morning. But if we're waiting till tomorrow morning, because I get up early to write, I can't look at anything.
Yes, it
I don't want
creates
to
an internet
see
blackout.
any. Yeah, because even you can black it out so you don't see the score. But even then, if you've got your news feed on and it'll say, Kyler Murray excels, and you're like,
No,
okay,
no.
yeah,
Yep, yes, exactly. Yeah. Any social media. My brother, is a huge NFL fan, lives in Cleveland, big Browns fan. And I
yeah.
went through, I used to watch every Sunday was football day, and it still is for him. And he'd call me during the game, and I'd have to go, "Don't tell me anything. I'm recording this one." So yes, I get that absolutely. So what about in the news? What's been pulling you away from your work?
Try not to watch as much news as I used to years ago because I find I'm actually happier if I'm not too aware of everything going on. But the protests lately have been catching my eye. And as you're probably aware, for some years, they've been saying how the youth of the US had no interest in politics and weren't involved. And to watch the protests, especially the college protests right now, and I don't know all the details. I don't know who's right or who's wrong, but I'm kind of proud of them to see them standing up again and voicing themselves, saying what they believe, because I think that's the key to everything is we need to get back to discussions and debates and actually sharing opinions rather than being afraid to say anything that's not correct at the moment.
Right. Well, and yeah, and I think that a lot of the debate here has been, oh, they're doing it wrong. And there's a lot of kind of cultural amnesia about, that is what protests are supposed to do, is be inconvenient, and be loud and sometimes be obnoxious. And so, regardless of the fact that there are, certainly a few of the protesters who are going about it in ways that may or may not be counterproductive. But anytime I hear that, where somebody, our generation is saying that's counterproductive because it turns me off, I have to like remind myself it's supposed to. Like this is supposed to be, uncomfortable for you. If they did it in a way that
That's
was
the word.
so comfortable that it got no news, you would be unaware of it. So that it is it. I think there has been a lot more protesting than maybe we have been aware of for years. And this is finally flared up when, universities like Columbia call in the police, and then it makes news. And I'm like, well, then they were successful in getting attention for the thing they wanted to get attention for, which, is certainly, forcing us to think more deeply about something that we would rather not think about. What is going on in Gaza is horrific. We don't want to think about it, and they're forcing us to consider that. So I am grateful for them. Even when I, as an old guy, am like, oh, I don't like it. Well, no, they've made me think.
Yes, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So, what about hobbies? What is a hobby that has been pulling you away from your work?
Well, I'm not sure if I'd call it a hobby or I'll have to come up with a whole new name for it. Being in Britain and actually living here, it's the architecture and the castles. I've just been going nuts over castles.
I love
It's,
them.
oh, I just will go someplace and we'll pass a castle, and some of them are just magnificent ruins, and some of them are, people are living in them, and there's everything on the spectrum. And I want to see them. I want to go in, I want to see it, I want to explore it. I guess because, born and raised in the US, we didn't have such things. I mean, every now and then you'll hear, oh, there's a castle. And I'd go look at it and it's, wait a minute, it's no castle. It's
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah, it is.
Here
It
we've
is
got the
shocking.
slits for the arrows.
Yeah, I mean, in the United States, we have most of the Native American cultures in the United States built out of wood, and therefore we don't have ancient structures. You find more in Mexico and down into South America, but we don't have, and so all of our buildings are very young. and getting to see these buildings in Europe that are just fantastic. The other thing that's always really striking to me about castles is how long it took for them to be built. You know, we want everything that we do in our lives to be done in, a year, 3 years, whatever. I mean, houses can be built in a season. And the idea of a building being built over 300 years is just wild to us, but these were these magnificent structures that people dedicated their entire lives to building. So when you're looking at castles, what's jumping out that you're going, oh, that's a feature that I enjoy? Because there's so many.
It's, I think a lot of it is there'll be like smallness, the stairs. There's
Yes.
so much more narrow
Mhm.
than what you would expect. I mean, and they completely blow out any of our building codes. But you start to realize that people really were a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Um, St. Paul's Cathedral, the stairs, I mean, you're talking solid stone, worn down by so many people walking on them. The there's some really intelligent thought put in to where rooms go, toilets, if you will, bathrooms, which is not fun to think about, kitchens. I love looking at kitchens.
But it challenges our chronological snobbery. We have this, attitude of, I have a cell phone in my pocket, therefore I am smarter than everyone who has come before. And, the fact of the matter is somebody 10,000 years ago had an IQ exactly the same as mine. The brain has not evolved that fast. And so the people who were building those castles were just as clever as you and I. And yeah, you can see that cleverness in the architecture. It really, there are a lot of things where, the technology that we have is, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Like there's other people who've done that work, but the actual cleverness of the construction, it really is very cool. I'm a big fan of things like the murder hole. I love the name of the murder hole for one thing, but designing a hole above the entrance where you could shoot arrows, or pour things directly down on people. And so when my my partner and I, on our first date, this was where we kind of knew we were very kismet. I started talking about, I was reluctant, but I was like, I admit one of my dreams is to have a castle and, or design a castle, live in a castle, that kind of thing. And she was like, me too. And we started talking about what we would want out of the castle of our dreams. We're like, wow, we are big giant geeks. But yes, castles are really, really cool. A portcullis in front of your house would be really great.
Yes.
Oh, that's yes. Yeah, they really are cleverly constructed. So on that note, sort of, speaking of castles, one of the things I always ask authors is if you were in and you've written fantasy, so you've, certainly dallied in this world, if you were in a fantasy role-playing game, what would be your race and class?
Oh, the only fantasy game I played, and this was, I mean, this was a long time ago, was EverQuest,
Oh yeah.
which was, you pick your race, you pick your job or your rank or whatever. I actually found a Fury, which was in the healer class, but they had a little bit of everything. They had some fighting abilities, they had nukes, so they had some magic. And I think I really loved it because you could go out and do solo quests, but you could also were an important part of the group because you could stand in the back and heal people,
Mhm.
which standing in the back and letting somebody else take the brunt just suited me down to my
Well,
toes.
and that's why I love to ask this question. So, what do you think that reveals about you in our world? Like, why that character and that class?
I love being independent. I love going out and doing things on my own. But I also, I actually love, and this is crazy, I love people. And I love helping others succeed. And I love standing in the back and like pushing them forward to do the best they can. And I guess standing there healing them is great.
Yeah.
It's just, that's kind of a weird thing when you mention it, but that's true.
But I find it unsurprising. And when I think about the fact that you have written a couple of nonfiction books, one of which is about how to give and receive feedback, and the other is a book for writers. I mean, these are acts of service to write these kinds of books. And so, there's that healer class doesn't always have to be, somebody working in a hospital. Sometimes it is that act of saying, I'm here to help you as a writer, or I'm here to help. I mean, giving and receiving receiving feedback is I teach creative writing classes at the high school level, and I'd say to my students, most adults you will meet in your life do not know how to give or receive feedback. We need to spend days working, practicing. How do you do this well? And this isn't just going to help you in your creative writing, it's going to help you in every relationship, you know?
That is so true. The one thing I used to insist on people is everybody, all writers, all artists, everybody gets criticism. The difference between being a professional or not is how you handle it.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with what you get. They all tell me, oh, I'm going to, someday nobody's going to dare criticize me. I'm like, no, that's not where you want to be, because that just means that you think you're so superior, you don't hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. I teach my students the first thing they say when they get feedback is thank you. Say
Yes.
this person is giving you a gift. Start with thank you. And then we talk a lot about, are you asking questions because you're defending yourself, or are you asking questions to clarify? And how do you figure out what is an appropriate, but starting from a place of gratitude? I recognize you are giving me feedback and I am grateful for that. And then thinking about how to give feedback, you are giving this gift. And if this gift is not well received, you can stop. Like there was a wonderful tweet I saw that was specifically about gender, and about how men are taught to give feedback regardless of whether it is requested, and the non-consensual feedback is a part of kind of the culture of non-consent. And so how do we start with, are you interested in feedback? Do you want, rather than, I'm just going to tell you what I think about this, because that is, so I think you are doing, not just writers, and not just creatives. Everyone should learn about how to give and receive feedback. That's a wonderful bit of healing you've done in providing that to the world.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump to our commercial break. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Okay.
Special announcement time. NotAPipe Publishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books. Alexandra has never been so far from home or so deep in danger. Now fans can follow the journey to the end. Reader Views says New Horizon is a fantastic beginning to the Europa trilogy. This riveting adventure will have you hanging on to the edge of your seat. Get all the books of the trilogy, New Horizons, Challenger, and New Frontiers, wherever you buy books. Or visit the author at michelleleigh.com. Leigh spelled Leigh. Join the adventure today. Authors, poets, screenwriters, writers of all kinds. We're putting together our team for the Alzheimer's Association's annual The Longest Day fundraiser, and we want you to join us to use your writing superpowers for a good cause. Our team, Writing Against the Darkness, joins together via Zoom or in-person meetups and writes from dawn until dusk on the summer solstice. So mark your calendars for Thursday, June 20th, 2024. We're teaming up with some wonderful partner organizations to build our team, thanks to the Author Alchemy Summit, Indigo Editing, Unsolicited Press, Pile Press, the Pile Press magazine Chunk, and Overcup Press for joining with NotAPipe Publishing in this fundraiser. There are links to all of those partners in the show notes. If you want to get to network with writers from these great partners, get a whole lot of writing done, and raise funds for Alzheimer's research and care for families suffering from this disease, click on the link in the show notes and join the team. You're going to be writing anyway. Why not write even more and do some extra good for the world? See you there. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Joe Sparks. And Joe, when you have been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
New writing office. We are in the process of selling our flat, because that's what we call it here, and getting a new one. And we found one, we've made an offer on it. Don't know if we're going to get it or not. But I suddenly find myself, even when I'm working now, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if slightly larger office, slightly better desk? The desk needs to look like this. Oh, there's going to be my bookcases. Even though I keep telling myself I don't need a lot of bookcases anymore because I've got a Kindle, things like that.
No, I mean,
Mhm.
that's you can see my office behind me. This was a selling point of, or the reason to move to this house was a room of my own. This is an old idea, but very much a relevant one. Having a space that's just and one of the great things about books that you don't think about is books are incredibly absorbent of sound. So if you want that quiet, having lots of books on bookshelves makes for a quiet space. They're
I
excellent
never thought
sound
about that.
absorbers.
That's great. I
Yep.
never thought about that.
So pack it with books so that, and of course, there's the feel of I am surrounded by the works of all these people, which is both inspiring and challenging. Okay, I've got to live up to this. Like these are my peers and they're all staring at me. I really got to bring my A game.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. You look at something and you think, would Ray Bradbury quit right now? No.
Yes, yes, yeah. Cormac McCarthy would. How many words would he take out of this sentence? Because they really don't need to be there. Yeah. Everyone's styles is yelling at me. So, but yes, that's exciting. So, what are some specifics you've been thinking about that office space? Because that is a fun daydreaming exercise.
I One of the things that's driving me nuts is, believe it or not, I've got pictures I like to put on the wall. Like, I have this thing for Don Quixote for some
I
reason. I
love that
just,
one. That's one of my. I have a version that I did one time where I tried to copy it, and so I have Don Quixote in my living room. I love that painting.
I love the story. I've always loved the story. This Spanish way of taking something. It's so humorous, but it's also, it just makes such a great character, such a great tale to me.
It
I love
is.
the
Well,
idea.
I wonder if it would hold up now. I think we would read it and read. I mean, it is funny, but it is funny at a character's expense in a way that is often cruel. And I wonder if, for a modern reader, if we would read it and go, "This is just a whole bunch of people making fun of someone with dementia. Like this is really mean." It is. It's a tragic kind of humor throughout. It's a wonderful book. If folks have not read Don Quixote, it's a tome. It is not, it won't be light reading. This will be your entire summer, but it's really, really fantastic. But you probably won't read it in the same way somebody read it, a few hundred years ago, where
Years
it was
ago.
this riot. It's grim.
Well, that is kind of true. But there's also such a nobleness
Yes.
about it. The character within that believes in certain rules and ways to behave, to be kind to others, and to doing it, even when it's not convenient.
Oh yeah, I find Don Quixote himself very admirable. I find the way he is treated by others to be cruel. And often I think that we were supposed to read it and laugh at him and laugh at the way that they are making fun of him. And instead I am empathizing with him. And I'm going, but here's the one person with nobility in the story, and everyone is just mocking him incessantly, and it's very sad. But yes, it is it's a delightful book in its own way. But you do have to kind of put yourself into that kind of ethos of nobility and in order to fully appreciate it. And I think that's a good mental exercise in and of itself, to think about virtue and to think about what was the right thing to do that he's constantly trying to do, which is being mocked a lot of the time. But if you can get beyond the mockery and go, there is something deeply admirable about the way that he is trying to live.
Yes. Yeah, I have to agree with that. I really do.
Yeah. So you've got Don Quixote there in the office. What else do you want to have decorating that space?
I want a chair, a really comfortable, cushy chair that's not at the desk that I can go sit in because, and I'm sure it's true for you too, there's a lot of writing that is more like thinking. I find myself actually talking to my characters these days. I mean, I do interviews of my characters. Well, and what's your favorite curse word? And how do you feel about this character? And oh, you hate him. Okay, why do you hate him? So yeah, I want that chair to go sit in and just think.
That's a great idea. I've got a couch here in the office, but I this was not originally in here. This was my partner and I like to just be in one another's space. We just do parallel play. So she'll come in and just read while I write, which is really nice. But I have not used it in that way, and I think that's a good idea to have a comfortable place within the workspace to still be at work. You're not leaving your office. But
Yes.
I think that's really cool. And to to be able to get up from the computer and go, I'm going to go perform the interview, and it's a distinct movement, but it's still in your space. That's a great idea. Would you want that to be like one of those large, wingback chairs, or distinct from like a desk chair?
Oh yeah, it's got to be very different. It's got to be comfortable. I got to be able to lean back, close my eyes, maybe even fall asleep a little.
Yeah.
But it's also got to be print. I'm not sure what the print fabric's going to be, but it's got to be print.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. You'll have to, when you do get that, you'll have to go on your social media and post pictures. And this is the chair where the magic happens, because I think that'll be cool for readers to understand. It's distinct from the act of typing. Like there's parts of writing that are sitting there staring at the ceiling.
See that? That's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah,
Terrible at social
absolutely.
media, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, yeah, it is a learning process. Well, I went to this conference recently where they were talking about the fact that the algorithms hide, because they don't just show everything in sequence from everything everyone you follow has posted, which is good. It would be overwhelming. Some people post so much more, but as a consequence, we think, oh, when I post, my followers see that. And the folks at this conference were pointing out most of the things you post are invisible to most of the people who follow you. And so you can post a lot more than you think without bothering people, without overwhelming them. The algorithm will
I
handle that.
agree.
And that was good for me to hear as somebody who goes, oh, if I post 2 or 3 times in a day, I'm going to bother people. No, they will, they most of them won't see it. Unless they interact with you, in which case, then the algorithm will show them more of yours because they want it. So feel free to post a lot more.
Cool. I need to learn this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, there's a whole world of learning that we need to do to engage in these spaces, because different ones, the algorithms operate in different ways. There are a few of the new ones where they really are just a chronological feed, but most of them are algorithmically determined now, and so you can post a lot more than you think on those, and that was helpful for me to hear. Um,
Yes.
so one of the things that I like to, I admit I am often remiss about actually posting the poll, but to ask authors is, if you had a poll question for the world, feel free to post this on your social media as well. What would be your poll question?
Brussels sprouts. I want to know if we should bin them or if we should bake them with bacon.
Mm,
And binning them in the UK means throwing them in the trash. They call it a bin. Well, you're in Oregon. I was in Oregon, and we used to actually bake them with bacon, and I liked them, but I found a lot of people think they're like the devil. So,
so there's two fascinating things that I've learned about Brussels sprouts. Folks who are our age, the Brussels sprouts when we were kids were a different plant. They have been genetically modified. So that memory we have of them being particularly bitter, the reason that people are constantly kind of rediscovering Brussels sprouts is they've changed the Brussels sprouts. And so folks out there who have not had Brussels sprouts, try them again, because you may find you like them, but you're associating this memory of the way that they were when you were a kid. And then the other thing is the way that they were prepared for me when I was a kid was not in butter and bacon, and baked or grilled. And as an adult, when I had them, I was like, oh my gosh, these are so good. Why have I not been
yes.
eating these? But it's because the plant changed and because I had not had them prepared in that way. And so, yeah, I would certainly have an elbow on the scale on that one. I have become a fan of Brussels sprouts. But yeah, that would be a great question. Find out, how people feel about modern Brussels sprouts. Because yeah, I know a lot of people are not fans. And so do you still eat them frequently over there now?
to find here? Well, they're not really harder to find, I guess. It's that in the US, you could get them like pretty much ready to cook.
Hmm.
Over here in the UK, I'm finding a lot of things are less prepared, which actually is very good. I mean, I think it's much healthier, but it also takes more work, which
Yes.
if you've been writing all day and you're like, I'm hungry now, it's really tempting to go get fish and chips.
Yeah. Yes, yes, which is also excellent. And so, yes, that is that is a temptation that I would succumb to frequently. Yes, real fish and chips in the UK. Or a curry, because a lot of the UK food is not really UK food. It's food that the empire brought to the UK, and the curry in the UK is fantastic because they had to leave the island to get good food, and they got Indian food, and it's delicious. Where in the UK are you living?
Actually, in Plymouth, which is in the southwest, like right on the water, and I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun.
Is that a touristy place for folks from London? Do they come down to Plymouth?
They come down to the southwest to the beaches. Most people, they'll come to Plymouth, but they're not here like forever, which is kind of good. It keeps it. We have lots of events like Guy Fawkes and when they have the fireworks here. But they pass through Plymouth going to Cornwall,
Ah,
which is everybody wants to go to the beaches there.
yeah.
And honestly, they're wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Now, do you have good curry in Plymouth? Have you found good curry?
Yes. And even better in some of the other spots. The best curry I've ever had in the US didn't quite match up to the so-so curry I've had here.
Yeah.
Everybody here takes their curry so seriously.
Yeah, that's that because I have heard people I saw an interview where somebody was saying, "Oh, the best English food is curry." And I was just cracking up, Yes, food that they stole and brought back is the best English food, but it's really true. Like a good curry in England is fantastic. Uh,
They are.
So I've taken to asking folks about, we were talking earlier about politics and, it can be, and I think social media exaggerates this, it can be an outrage machine. Like, what can people say in the attention economy to try and get attention? So I ask authors cautiously, carefully, if you were to try and get attention with some opinion of yours that was going to get people to go, oh, Joe Sparks, oh my gosh, I'm so offended. I guess I have to read all of her books to find out where she comes up with this idea. What would be your hugely offensive idea for the outrage machine?
This one's not hard. Um, I want Britain to switch to driving on the correct side of the road. It drives
Ooh.
me nuts here. It's what's hard is that when you've spent all that time in the US and you're used to cars driving on the right-hand side and you get over here, and it's not so much even the driving, it's crossing the road in a city. They've actually put signs up on the road. They paint them on the road that says, look left. But I am slightly dyslexic, like a lot of people. So when it tells me to look left, I'm doing this, like, okay, which is which.
Yes.
And I end up standing there for 5 minutes trying to figure out if I can cross the road. I think it is time for them to actually come into the rest of the world and for once say, you know what? We're willing to do what you guys are doing.
Oh, yes, that will be a hugely controversial idea. Convincing the Brits to switch to the way everybody else does it rather than trying to force everyone else to do it their way. That is going to be a highly controversial idea. I think that, but they did with metric. They did eventually switch. We're the ones who are foolishly continuing to use the imperial system, and at least the Brits switched to metric, so it is possible. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think the rationale that it would save lives. You're right. Like you wouldn't have to tell people look left. If, it's a great point. So, Joe, where can folks find you online and find your work?
I've got a website, joesparks.com. I'm on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page, Sparks Books. I'm LinkedIn. I am on what's formerly known as Twitter.
Yes.
But probably the best is just hop on the website, contact me. Or well, that's not true.
I would agree.
Facebook,
I would
I'll
say
answer.
this may sound inappropriate, but I need to tell you, you have a very nice website. It is it's really
You.
clean. I was looking at your website going, I really need to clean mine up. This is nice. It is it is a nice, straightforward, easy to use website. So yeah, folks should check that out. It's a polished writer's website. It looks good. Mine is here's every new thing coming at you and every button, and it's too much. Yours is better. So Joe, who else would be your recommendation for somebody I should have on this show?
Oh, I've got two people I would strongly recommend. There's a writer friend of mine here in the UK who does fantasy. She does sci-fi as well. Her name is Jessica Turnbull, and she's great. But the other one is a little more controversial. Her name is Ann Albers, and she does nonfiction. She is a spiritualist, a psychic, and an amazing, amazing person. She's also a good friend.
Yeah.
Both of them, I think, would make wonderful, wonderful interviews.
Oh, that's great. And I have heard Jessica Turnbull's name. I've not read any of her work yet, but I have heard her name before. But yes, having Anne on would be really fascinating as well. So I will reach out. Thank you for those. So
Cool.
before we get to our advice for folks for the week, I've got to get some people thanked who have helped out with this show. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro. I prefer the dusk. Listeners, let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I would love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipe Publishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate it and review it wherever you found it. And please check out Joe's The Honey Tree, the novel that she was talking about at the beginning of the show, and tell a friend about it. Give it that 5th star. It makes a big difference. Make Joe's day. That would be a really wonderful, generous thing to do. And while you're at it, if you want to click on that little like button for this show as well, we'd really appreciate it. So as we go into this week, Joe, what would be your advice for all of our listeners?
Keep your eyes on the good stuff because eventually the bad stuff fades away. And the more you look at the good, the less you'll see the bad.
Yes, instead of look left, look at the good.
Yes.
I like it. Well, I always say a book without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too. So don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, Joe and I are still proud of you.
If I take my time,